Meeple Talk!
Hello everyone, we're Meeple Talk. I'm Adam.
And I'm Stephanie, and this week we've got another edition of our Tiny Epic series here, Tiny Epic Western. Again, Scott Alm's production and gambling distribution. This one, I would say, really has a different feel from the other Tiny series. That what would you like to say?
Yeah, it has more of a poker feel.
Yes, it's the Wild West, where players are going to be trying to acquire buildings to be the best, own the town, essentially, and they compete with each other through a series of poker hands and also possibly some dueling. So it's a really neat and different idea from the other Tiny Epics that you may have seen before and also currently being produced as well. I don't know, shall we take a look at this game?
Yeah, let's check out the Wild West. So, this is the setup for Tiny Epic Western. So, this game has very few components. As you'll see, every player has a player card. And on that card, we have the influence tokens on there, showing how much influence you have. Every player has a unique ability described here. And they each have 3 posse tokens, or meeples, if you wish. And you can see the other player's card here. Every player has 1 poker card, and those cards are kept secret. And there are also 6 poker cards dealt on the sides of these buildings. And speaking of those, there are 6 buildings. The town hall is special. Certain things happen only at the town hall. The other 5 buildings, you'll notice, have cards in front of them. Those are buildings that you can buy during the game. And also on the porch, sometimes there are cards there. That's where players will keep buildings that they have bought. Also in the game, there's a dealer token to indicate who has the first turn, and that is pretty important in the game. There is a wanted card. One player can claim that if they win a duel. And finally, there are these bullet dice, which are D6s, which are used during the duels. And those are all the components. Oh, I forgot this town hall, I should mention, this has an industry track to indicate the shares in any of the 3 industries in the game.
Okay, so for general gameplay, I realize we're missing a building here, so I'm going to put one here just for accuracy. Okay. These buildings essentially are what your main purpose of playing is, really. They'll indicate on the cards themselves victory points that you'll have just by having the card itself, as well as certain combinations of industry tokens. When you buy these cards, you're going to be putting it in your player mat area, one on top of the preceding one, and you're going to be getting victory points based on the value of the industries themselves. The game originally starts with industries not really in any particular order, but as the game progresses, you might find that they may stack or move, and eventually, at the end of 6 rounds, they're going to be given a certain order. This order is important because first, second, and third, they'll have different values for whoever is the majority shareholder in that particular industry, indicated by the amount of icons you have on your cards that you've accumulated. So here you'll see the example is that the first place person for the top industry will get 5 victory points, followed by 3 for the second largest shareholder, and they decrease in value with the lower ranking industry. So this may change over time. How the actual gameplay goes, there's 4 phases. So first is that, starting with the dealer, going to be dealing out from these cards. You'll notice that it's a modified or simplified version of a card deck. They're going to be dealing out 2 cards per player. Each player is going to then look at their hand and decide to pick 1 card to keep and 1 to discard. And then next up, you're going to be examining here the layout of the buildings, ones that you might want to go to perhaps, and also the value of the cards and the suits around. And your goal is that you're going to be wanting to win as many hands, not only for the ability to buy buildings, but also to gain advantages that might be on certain jackpot points. So this is where phase 2 comes in, is the placement of your posse. Everyone has 3 posse tokens. 1 usually lies dormant throughout the whole game unless certain conditions activate it. But then you'll have these 2 standing posses always at your disposal that you're going to place on particular positions of the player mats. If you're on a porch, well, you can take advantage of whatever power that the particular card is going to be offering, or you can set it on a conditional place to either get an immediate benefit or a delayed benefit. Also, if you're going to a spot where another player is, no 2 people or no player can have two posse of the same type on one spot, but two opposing players can compete for a particular position. If that happens, that's where the duel comes in. So each player will have their dice, one for the defender, one for the attacker. They're going to roll off essentially the highest roll wins. There are ways that you can modify your dice rolls, but essentially whoever's the winner is going to take the benefit of that spot. How you decide where you want to place? Well, you can only buy buildings on the mats that you're currently occupying. Also, it could depend on certain benefits that you might be awarding, whether it's certain values of influence tokens that can be raised, whether there are the opportunities to modify cards either by number or suit, or other benefits that were indicated on these mats. Once your posse tokens, their meeples, are placed, that goes into the next phase, which is the actual exciting part of the game, which is the actual poker hand. So if you have, for example, in this case, yellow and blue, let's say these are the cards that each of the player has. They're going to make a hand with the two side cards, and they're going to compare who has the best hand. Everyone has the option of referring to the guide here. It's going to be sort of a simplified ranking, just like in poker, where you have pairs, straights, three of a kind, flushes, things like that. And whoever has the highest hand is going to get the benefit of whatever this mat is going to offer. After this is done, then you have another round of poker, and this happens at the town hall. Every player, everyone is going to be comparing their hand with the cards that are at the town hall. Whoever has the highest hand, and in order of winning hands, those players are then going to have the opportunity to buy buildings, or one building each, that their meeple might be resting on. With the exception of a leftover player token, this person can have the advantage of buying an extra card, even if they're not on that particular mat. One thing I didn't mention yet, this card right here, this is the rival. You might notice that, yeah, even though we can compete for the same mat, sometimes you might be in a position where there's only one meeple on a building mat. Well, they can't obviously compete with themselves, and they're not a default winner, so they do have to play the rival. So their hand could prevent a player from getting the benefit if it happened to be stronger. Generally, as we go around, these rounds will continue for a total of 6 rounds. And winners of the building phase will also choose which tokens to advance. And at the end of 6th round, you'll have final rankings for industries, final values of your cards that you have in your accumulated pile here, and then also just multiplying by your tokens, how many points you get through that, and really, whoever has the highest amount of victory points wins.
So, that was the game.
Yeah. And I was just going to jump right in to say that, too. But
go right ahead.
Sure. But okay. I mean, I guess I'll just go right into, spoiler alert, I like this game. And one of the things I really like is, lately we've been reviewing some Tiny Epic series of games, and one of the things I really like is that every version has been quite distinct and interesting and separate from each other, and I really like the feel of this particular one. I know when I originally saw it at Gen Con last year, it was a 2016 offering, and I was really, really into it because I like the idea of, again, how do you do board games differently? And it layers things like poker hands, a little bit of chance with the dice rolls and whatnot, worker placement and everything. It's just a unique setup with the different mechanics, and I really, really enjoy it. And it really, when you talk about like a theme or a skin, it doesn't feel like a fake plastic just put on top. It really works well with the idea of how the game is supposed to play out. The theme is completely in sync with it. I absolutely am a fan of this game. I mean, artwork's cool and everything else like that. Now, one of the things I guess is a bit of a miss is the actual rule writing. Compared to some of the other games that we had played, I know when I tried to bust out the rules for first-time players on 2 different occasions, when you start reading the rules as written, there's a bit of the because it's one of those things that you kind of have to go through it, understand what the game in its entirety is going to be working towards, and then you get the understanding of why each portion of the rules written in those phases are done in the way that they are. But I think if the rules were done in a little bit of a different order, doing a better overview first, then getting into the specifics, I think it would have been easier to pick up and grasp when teaching new players to play. So it's a simple game to play. It's a little bit harder to teach when you're going right from order of the book. So that was the only thing that we really had issues with, is the rules themselves. But otherwise, once you've gotten a handle of it, it's a really fun game to play, and I just love it thematically. So I say, hey, good job.
My opinion was, I also like this game. I wouldn't say I liked it as much as Tiny Epic Quest, which we've played, and Tiny Epic Galaxies, which is coming later. Simply because I feel like you didn't have the sense that you had a lot of control in the game. For example, during a turn, you get one card and you get to place 2 meeples. And that one card does a number of things. You would compete for loot here, or for influence, I should say, for your various things that you need here, and then use it again here, and then against the bank to find out who gets their first turn, to choose the buildings, which is also really important in the game, getting your first choice, because someone might take the building that you want. And then it's also used if you're the only one on a mat, then you're competing against the bank again. So I feel like this one card is doing too many jobs, and as a result, it feels like you're too dependent on that one card, and you only get 2 cards, so you only have 2 choices during the game. And then when you're placing your meeples, there aren't a lot of choices about where you're going to go. Often it's like, well, this one is available and no one else is there. I may not have to do a duel there. And then if you do have to do a duel, something can be taken away from you. I mean, I do definitely like the theme. I like how they implemented the theme. How when you have these bullet dice and you roll them, that's really cool. And then if you win, then you have the wanted, and this gives you an extra 2 victory points at the end of the game, which is nice. So I definitely like the theme. I think the gameplay is great. As Stephanie mentioned, the rules definitely have a lot of, I would call it more like omissions, or things that are not clearly explained. How ties are resolved in certain situations, like on a card, for example. Over just a couple plays, we found numerous situations where we couldn't find an answer in the rule book, and then had to go online, and there was no official source online to really, determine what was the answer. So then we just kind of had to house rule it. And I always feel bad whenever we have to end up house ruling something because we couldn't find the answer in the rule book. So I understand it's a tiny game, but we didn't have that issue with Tiny Epic Galaxies. We didn't have that issue with Tiny Epic Quest. So it's definitely this game and the rulebook for this game. Well, I don't think it was carefully vetted. But like I say, I feel like this game also is unique, like the other games are very unique. And I love this series. I really love it, and to say that this is not a great or perfect game, in my opinion, isn't saying that it's a terrible game or it's a mediocre game. It's unique. I haven't seen a game like this before, and the way it uses the poker cards is cool. But I feel like you just didn't have enough to do and didn't have enough control over your own game. Too much randomness. The industry tokens as well. The way they get advanced is, you have to beat the bank, but you're using that same card to do other things. So you may not want to beat the bank, and even if you're trying to beat the bank, many times you'll fail, and then you still don't have enough control over that. So,
but that's, I guess,
so that's my criticism to those 2 things. Otherwise, a great game.
And it's kind of interesting how really the reception of this game is sort of based on your, like, if you like cards, if you, I don't know, because he and I, obviously, Adam and I are differing opinions on this, where what you think is more of a little, like, not enough control in the cards that you have or the outcomes that happen, that's the kind of thing that I actually kind of like, whereas I feel like it is a certain level of control in the short-term versus long-term strategy of it, because you could try to accumulate all your points based on the types of buildings that you get from around town, subject to whatever may come up as the final rank of the industry token. So you can decide to focus on your buildings in the short-term game and sort of hedge your bets in the variety and number of industry images that you have on your cards. Or you can take the, I don't care what's happening in the short term, I'm going to make sure I dictate this town hall. And so you may focus on your hand being I don't care what happens if I really win my hands here, I'm going to make sure I get this. Maybe balancing the town hall with the leftover cards. So it kind of gives you more options in that way. So for me, I like that type of decision making that you have. And yes, you may have a bit of chance with the type of card you get or the type of suit, and picking one may not be as much of an option as if you had like full poker hands, obviously, with redeals and whatnot. But to me, that's not something that bothers me. I like the decision making that you have to do and the way it's structured. That is something that I kind of like and prefer. So it's really interesting how, what I like too about the Tiny Epics too is that when they're doing, when they have an idea, they take that risk and run with it. It may not appeal broadly, or it may be a super hit, but they're taking that chance. And I feel like, by not going with those safe routes, like they are, they're solid offerings. And that's what I've been really liking, about this game as well as some of the other ones that they have. So, I say good for taking that risk. You may get mixed opinions, but you know what? You're onto something. And I really think you should continue doing that, so
that's one thing I will also emphasize. I think the designer does a great job of coming up with unique games. So these are pretty impressive.
Yeah.
So for this game, I would give this game an 8. That would be my rating for it. Mainly because it has a unique theme. It's a solid game. Problems with the rules, but otherwise a good game. You know
what? I would probably do the same thing. Like, I really enjoy playing this game. Maybe 8.5, perhaps. I really enjoy playing this game, but it's the teachability factor that's been a bit of a detractor for that, especially new people who either maybe aren't familiar with cards or aren't familiar with these games. It was kind of hard to get into it until it's all done, and then you kind of see how the specifics of the different rules really have more meaning once it's actually gone through all fully. But otherwise, it's a really solid offering. So, you know what? I give thumbs up.
All right.
Yeah. So but thanks for checking out our review. Yeah, so come see. If you haven't seen our other any Tiny Epic game reviews, come check those out. We hope to have more in the future as well. And yes, for our other games, have a look at those too. We'll see you next time.
See you later.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.